In a world that celebrates youth and forgets the dreams grown old, there was a woman who stepped out from the silent shadows of her life, carrying with her a voice long buried beneath the dust of prejudice and pain. Clara Weston, at the age of 68, dressed in nothing more than a simple pearl-colored dress, stood quietly under the dazzling lights of Charleston's grandest theater, facing thousands of curious and skeptical eyes. No one expected anything grand from her. They came to witness a charming moment, a bit of endearing awkwardness, then clap politely and move on. But just a few notes in, the entire world fell silent, then rose to their feet in thunderous, unending applause. No one knew that behind the silver hair and the time-marked hands was a heart that had fought for half a century not to die along with its dream. Today, Clara's story is not just about a song, not just about a performance. It is a story of courage, of rebirth, and of how a dream that once seemed faded can bloom into wonder when someone dares to believe in the light once more. Amid the deep green, ancient trees of Belmont residences, where ivy-covered walls and marble steps gleamed constantly under the golden afternoon sun, there was a small apartment where Clara Weston had lived for nearly 30 years. Every morning, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the hand-embroidered lace curtains imported from Florence, Clara would sit by the window, pick up her old Parker pen, and leisurely work through the crossword puzzle in the New York Times. A steaming cup of Earl Grey rested nearby. Her rhythm of life was like a gentle symphony of time, unhurried, undisturbed. In a world where everyone seemed to be racing toward youth and glory, Clara resembled a forgotten rest note, beautiful, yet unnoticed. Inside the apartment, everything bore the imprint of a bygone era. An ebony piano sat quietly in the corner, no longer echoing the love ballads she once adored. Only a small music box on the table, the last gift from her late husband, would occasionally chime its tender tune when Clara absent-mindedly touched it. This woman once had a dream, a big one, to stand on the grandest stage and sing with a voice so powerful that the world would have to listen. But that dream had been locked away long ago, when Clara was just 20, all because of a single cold remark from the renowned vocal professor, Richard Hamilton. Technically sound, but you lack what makes people remember. You lack soul in your music. From that day on, Clara hid her voice like a precious antique no one valued anymore. She chose a life of silence, stepping into the background of church choirs, where her voice blended with the crowd. No more criticism, but no more praise either. Just her and music in a world of their own. Quiet but beautiful, like a secret garden no one knew existed. And so she grew old, alongside melodies never sung with her full heart beneath the stage lights. No one, not even Clara herself, knew that in just a few days, that long-forgotten dream would awaken once more, fierce, unstoppable, and light up the entire world. The phone rang just as Clara was standing by the window, the golden hue of sunset stretching across the marble floor, casting a melancholy glow throughout the room. She picked up with her usual weary indifference, but the moment she heard Eleanor Briggs's voice burst through the line, Clara froze, as if someone had ripped open the locked drawer where her worst memories were kept. "Clara, they picked you. You've been invited to compete on America's Spotlight. They want you to perform." Eleanor's voice cracked with innocent joy, while Clara stood frozen, the phone trembling in her hand, her heart pounding like someone had struck her chest with a heavy hammer. What did you do, Eleanor?" she hissed through clenched teeth, her voice hoarse from the storm rising inside her. Eleanor, still oblivious to the fury building in Clara, continued. "I sent them the Easter recital video. They asked to meet you. Clara, don't you see? This is fate. Fate." Clara nearly screamed, a sharp, painful sound even she didn't know she could make. "You call this cruel joke fate? Or are you thinking that just because they invited me, I'd foolishly walk back into the very place that shattered me into ashes?" Her voice was rising now, fury tangled with the terror of the past flooding back like a tidal wave. "You don't understand, Eleanor. You have no idea what it feels like to stand under those lights, to have someone look you dead in the eye and pass judgment, to crush your soul with a single sentence. You don't know what it means to collapse on your own dream, and then have to spend the rest of your life hiding in the shadows. On the other end of the line, Eleanor went silent, completely still. Clara continued, her voice trembling with unshed tears. I've learned my lesson, Eleanor. The world doesn't need someone like me. I'm too old, too late, too ordinary. And now you've just handed them a new joke, a new puppet to mock on stage. Thank you for that, she said bitterly, her voice thick with despair. Her aged hands gripped the armrest tightly, as if clinging to the last shred of dignity she had left. There was a breathless pause. Then Eleanor spoke again, her voice no longer cheerful, but calm, eerily calm. You're right. I don't know everything you've been through. But you're wrong, Clara Weston. You're not a puppet. You are a flame. You just spent so long burying yourself in the ashes that you forgot how brightly you once burned. And if you can't stand up, can't sing this time, then don't blame the world for extinguishing you. You did that yourself. Clara collapsed into her chair. Eleanor's words struck deeper than any insult she'd ever heard. She looked around her familiar apartment, beautiful but cold. The paintings, the old piano, the faded music box, all silent witnesses to a life lived safely but squandered. And in that moment, Clara felt two hot tears roll down her cheeks, not out of anger at Eleanor, but because she knew. This time, if she walked away, she'd have no one left to blame but herself. Clara Weston closed her eyes, letting the storm rise within her. And from the barren depths of that silence, a question surfaced, frail but urgent. If not now, then when? That night, Clara Weston's apartment was cloaked in still darkness, lit only by the dim golden glow of the lamp by the window. She sat motionless in her armchair, clutching a small music box to her chest. A simple wooden box, yet inside it held an entire piece of her youth. The lid creaked open, and a familiar melody began to play faintly. Each note felt like a teardrop falling onto a soul that had long gone dry. Clara closed her eyes, and fragments of memory rose in her mind. Nights of rehearsing until her throat burned, the eyes of teachers, of friends, and then his eyes, the coldest of them all. The eyes of Professor Richard Hamilton, piercing her like a blade. Never enough, Clara. You'll always be a shadow. Her head fell forward, and tears soaked into her palms. The music kept playing, tender, distant, like a voice calling out from the part of Clara she had lulled to sleep for half a century. In her mind, she heard the whisper of her late husband. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to sing for yourself. She heard the bright laughter of her daughter Madeline as a child, when Clara would hold her and hum lullabies in the living room. Those vivid echoes stirred inside her, brushing away the thick dust of fear and long-carried pain. Why had she let one man's judgment destroy everything she once loved? Why had she let someone, no matter how powerful, define who she was? Clara held the music box tighter to her chest and looked out the window with tear-filled eyes. The Charleston sky glittered with stars, like 1,000 stage lights waiting for her. She stood up, legs trembling, but her gaze now burned with something strange and new. No longer the look of a woman surrendering to fate, but the eyes of a warrior rising from the ashes. She stepped toward the dusty piano in the corner of the room, gently lifting the lid. Her trembling fingers touched the first white key. A sound rang out, slightly offbeat, a little weak, but it was alive. It was awakening. Clara pressed the next keys, a simple chord that echoed through the room like a quiet vow. She would run no longer. It no longer mattered what they thought. It no longer mattered whether she won or not. Clara Weston knew now. Her dream had never truly died. It had only been waiting patiently for her courage to ignite it again. She laughed, a laugh tangled with tears, but overflowing with freedom. Wiping her eyes, she walked to the closet and pulled out the pearl evening gown she had once saved for an occasion that never came. She hung it up before the mirror, studying herself through the soft sheen of fabric. Her eyes stopped, and she looked deep in her own reflection. And for the first time in decades, she didn't see an old, ordinary woman. She saw a singer, an artist, a dream that had never really shattered, just waited for this moment to come alive again, brighter than ever before. The day Clara Weston stepped into the Opus Grand Theater, the most magnificent venue in Charleston, with towering white marble columns and dazzling crystal chandeliers suspended from its lofty ceiling. She took a deep breath, trying to shake off the weight pressing on her chest. But the moment she passed through the grand glass doors, surrounded by a flurry of young, vibrant contestants radiating energy and glamour, Clara felt like a flat note in a symphony she no longer belonged to. The glances, the hushed whispers, they were like tiny needles pricking at her fragile pride. Her pearl evening gown, the finest thing she owned, suddenly looked outdated and misplaced among the flashy, modern outfits around her. A young woman named Zoe Monroe, with blazing purple hair and ears lined with piercings, sat down next to her in the waiting area. She offered Clara a wry, sarcastic smile. "You from a church choir or something?" she sneered. Clara nodded, trying to smile. But Zoe leaned in closer and whispered, "Don't let the polite faces fool you. This show always needs a sweet old lady for people to pity. They'll keep you a few rounds for the tears and ratings, then toss you. They don't need you to win. They just need your story to sell sadness." Clara sat in stunned silence. Her hand tightened around her purse like it was the last anchor to her dignity. In the makeup room, she found herself swallowed up by rows of flawless faces, contestants sculpted by trainers and adorned by professionals. And her, just an older woman with fine lines at the corners of her eyes and hands marked by time. The makeup artist smiled awkwardly, trying to make her camera-friendly, but Clara knew. No powder could hide the truth. In the producer's eyes, she was nothing more than a flickering candle, good for one brief, sentimental minute of screen time. While waiting for her turn, Ryan Sterling, the executive producer, approached. His smile gleamed like polished plastic. He patted her on the shoulder. "Clara, just be yourself, okay? Audiences love inspirational stories, especially from people like you." There was no mistaking the patronizing tone. He had already written her as someone who would fail gently, in a way that made viewers feel warm and safe. As Ryan walked away, Clara overheard him whisper to an assistant, "Perfect for the sympathy vote segment. The audience will love her right before we cut her." Clara sat still, eyes fixed ahead. She said nothing, reacted to nothing. But inside, her heart bled. Humiliation surged through her like a rising tide. Had Eleanor been wrong? Had she been wrong to believe the world still had room for people who'd once been broken? Part of Clara wanted to take off her shoes, walk out of that theater, and vanish forever. But another part, stronger, fiercer, rose up within her like a flame piercing the night. No, she would not let herself be used and quietly fade like a shadow again. If they wanted to use her as entertainment, she would make sure they'd never forget that entertainment. Clara Weston was no longer the trembling woman beneath the spotlight. She would walk out onto that stage not to beg for pity, but to sing, to live, and to reclaim the voice the world had stolen from her at the age of 20. The crystal lights in the grand hall of the Opus Grand Theater blazed brilliantly, as if trying to burn through every last corner of the room. The velvet red seats were filled to the brim. Cameras panned across the crowd. The eyes of the audience swept over Clara Weston like cold blades as she made her way backstage. Her hands trembled, but in her eyes burned a quiet fire. Even she hadn't realized she still carried it. A stagehand gently grabbed her elbow and guided her forward. "You're on right after the rock band and before the little opera girl, okay? Just smile, say something touching, and sing." The audience loves cute performances. Clara nodded, but inside her, a storm churned. She knew exactly what they expected. A sweet, trembling old lady under the lights, singing a frail tune before being eliminated with polite sympathy. The rock performance ended to thunderous applause. The lights dimmed into a softer glow. Then the MC's voice rang out. "Up next, from Charleston's historic district, a grandmother here to prove that dreams don't come with expiration dates. Please welcome Clara Weston." A smattering of applause followed, polite but with little anticipation. Clara drew in a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. Her low-heeled shoes tapped lightly on the floor, echoing like a heartbeat. The stage lights were so blindingly bright she couldn't see a single face in the crowd, only a sea of white light. She moved toward the microphone, her pearl evening gown swaying gently with each slow step. Clara bowed her head slightly. Whispers and soft giggles rose from the crowd. Somewhere, someone murmured, "Adorable." Classic one-rounder. The first judge, Tyler Anderson, a former pop star, tilted his head with a half-smile. "Good evening, Ms. Weston. Can you tell us what brought you here tonight?" Clara gripped the microphone, the cold metal sending a chill straight to her heart. The producer's script was etched into her mind. Talk about unfulfilled dreams, be inspiring for older folks. But then, she heard Eleanor's voice echo in her memory. "Don't let them decide your story." Clara raised her head. Her eyes shone under the harsh lights. She smiled, her voice low but steady. "Actually, I didn't know I was part of this until my friend submitted a video of me singing at church without telling me. I'm here for one reason, to sing again. For myself." A brief laugh flickered through the audience, not mocking, but touched by her sincerity. Tyler nodded. "And what will you be singing for us tonight?" Clara held the mic gently. "At Last" by Etta James. A ripple of murmurs spread through the judges. Some exchanged glances. It was a bold choice. A difficult song, even for professionals. And for a woman nearly 70? The orchestra began its slow, soulful intro, resonating through the hall. Clara closed her eyes. One beat, two, as if listening for the whisper of her own heart. And then she sang, soft but full of depth. The opening notes wavered slightly, but did not break. Clara's voice didn't try to impress with technique. It didn't show off. It didn't plead. It was simple, raw, true. It was her soul, naked, time-worn, and utterly human. Each word carried years of loss, of dreams buried, of love never extinguished. It wasn't a perfect voice. It was something rarer. It was a voice that told the truth. The crowd fell silent. All the quiet scoffs vanished. In their place, breathless stillness. Eyes locked on the small woman standing beneath the blazing lights, as for the first time, they were truly seeing her. Clara kept singing. Each lyric stretched out like rays cutting through the thick darkness of forgotten years. She forgot the microphone, forgot the judges, forgot the cameras capturing every line on her face. All that remained was her. And Richard, her late husband, smiling from somewhere far away. Every note she sang was a whisper to him, to the young girl inside her who had once collapsed under a cruel judgment, and to the woman standing there today who had dared at last to rise again, to sing for herself. As Clara Weston reached the final notes of At Last, something extraordinary happened. That raw, soulful voice, so unpolished, so human, poured through the grand hall of the Opus Grand Theater, seeping into every crack and corner, into the marble walls, the velvet seats, the heaving chests of breathless silence. Eyes that had squinted in doubt moments earlier now widened in pure, unfiltered astonishment. Clara wasn't just singing. She was living. She was breathing. She was telling the story of a life of love, of loss, of long-buried longing, with every husky, gentle note. It wasn't a voice that met textbook standards. It was something far more powerful. It reached into the deepest chambers of every heart in the room. As the chorus swelled, Clara's voice, etched with the cracks of time, carried an undeniable gravity, as if every pain, every sacrifice, every unspoken truth of millions were being released through her throat. Camila Reese, the notoriously icy and demanding judge, instinctively brought a hand to her mouth, unable to stop the tears spilling from her eyes. Marco Vance, a music producer who had worked with the world's biggest stars, sat upright, his gaze sharp and reverent, as if witnessing one of life's rare miracles. And Tyler Anderson, the judge who'd smirked when Clara first walked out, now tapped his hand gently to the rhythm, his smile long gone, replaced by quiet reverence. The music stopped. Clara's final high note hung suspended in the air, like a star slowly bursting into light. And in that breathless moment, time itself seemed to stop. Not a sound, not a whisper, only silence, complete and reverent. Not from lack of feeling, but from being overwhelmed by the beauty that had just unfolded. Then, from the front row, a middle-aged woman rose to her feet. Her applause echoed against the marble walls, and soon it was followed by a tidal wave, row after row standing up. Applause thundered. Whistles rang out from the balconies. Cheers erupted like a storm crashing over the theater. All 1,200 people stood, cheering for Clara Weston as if she had broken down the armored walls that modern life had quietly built around their hearts. Clara stood under the blinding lights, wrapped in the invisible embrace of a crowd in awe. Her small hands dropped to her sides. She couldn't speak. All she could do was raise a trembling hand to her mouth, tears streaming down her face, mingling with a smile she could no longer hold back. For nearly 50 years, she had lived in fear of being seen, of being judged, of being measured. But in that single moment, her courage, her decision to stand and sing with everything she had left, had given her something no degree, no critic, no stage could ever take away. Dignity, recognition, and above all, the right to be wholly herself. Backstage, Ryan Sterling and the production team sat frozen before the monitor. Their plan to frame Clara as a sweet, tear-jerking side act had completely unraveled. They hadn't created cheap entertainment. They had unintentionally awakened a mighty heart, and it had set fire to thousands more. Ryan bowed his head and whispered, barely audible, "We just witnessed history." And out on stage, the MC, his eyes red with emotion, stepped forward and took the microphone. His voice cracked as he spoke. "Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think there's anything left to debate. Clara Weston didn't just perform tonight. She gave us a lesson in courage, in love, and in the timeless beauty of the human spirit." Once more, applause erupted like a wave. Clara bowed deeply. Then she turned and walked off stage, her footsteps light as air, as if floating. She had sung, she had fought, and she had won, not just on that stage, but over the fear that had imprisoned her for a lifetime. The next morning, sunlight flooded the living room of Clara Weston's suite at the Grand Charleston Hotel. She sat by the window, a steaming cup of Earl Grey in her hand, gazing down at the bustling crowd below with a serene smile. The fear, anxiety, and despair of yesterday seemed to have been washed away by the emotional storm of the night before. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages, calls, emails pouring in like a flood. That morning's nationwide news opened with a clip of Clara singing, "At Last." The hashtag Clara Weston was everywhere across social media. Praise flowed in from every corner. The soul of America, a voice time forgot but the heart remembered, proof that greatness has no age. Madeline, her daughter, had flown in from Cincinnati during the night. She rushed into the room and wrapped Clara in a tight embrace, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Mom, you've gone viral. Over 5 million views in just 12 hours. The whole world loves you. You did it." Clara smiled, a smile steeped in relief and pure happiness. "All I did, Madeline," she said softly, "was sing with all my heart." A knock came at the door. It was Ryan Sterling, standing awkwardly with a large bouquet of white lilies in his arms. His usual slick confidence was gone, replaced by a genuine, almost unfamiliar sincerity. "Mrs. Weston, I came to apologize. And to thank you," he said, voice low. "I was wrong to underestimate you. I planned to turn you into a tear-jerking story for ratings. But you turned it into a moment of true glory. Last night, we broke a 10-year ratings record. And more than that, you woke something in all of us that we had forgotten." Clara accepted the flowers, smiling gently, but firmly. "Sometimes being underestimated is a gift," she said. "It gives us the chance to do something no one expects." Ryan chuckled sheepishly, then brightened. "Silvercrest Records and Harmony Global. Two of the biggest labels called me this morning. They want to offer you a special contract. They want to record an album called Voices of Experience. They said they've never heard anyone sing with so much emotion. Clara's eyes widened in disbelief. At my age, Ryan nodded, firm and enthusiastic. Exactly because of your age. Because no one sings like you. Because the world needs real stories told by real hearts, not manufactured perfection. When Ryan left, leaving the room brimming with hope, Clara sat back down and gently fiddled with her phone. A new message popped up. She opened it, her eyes widening, then softening with tears. It was from an unknown number. Clara, it's me, Richard Hamilton. I live in Florida now. I'm 92. I watched you sing last night, and I cried. I was wrong. Wrong in a way I can never forgive myself for. I saw only technique and missed the soul in your voice. You were not just enough. You were extraordinary. Please forgive me. Clara read the message again and again, each word peeling away the old scar she had carried for half a century. She lifted her head and looked in the mirror. And for the first time in her life, she didn't see an aging woman in a faded pearl dress. She saw an artist, a woman who had risen above judgment, above fear, above the crushing weight of doubt, standing in the world without apology, without permission, shining with her true light. And Clara Weston understood. Justice doesn't always arrive with loud applause or public declarations. Sometimes it comes silently but profoundly, through the recognition of one's own heart, and from hearts that can no longer deny the truth. When Clara Weston returned to the Opus Grand Theater, she was no longer the quiet woman who once slipped in, burdened by fear and self-doubt. This time, she stood tall on the grand stage, the golden lights beaming down on her brand-new pearl gown. Her silver flats shimmered under the spotlights, and the smile on her face no longer held a trace of the old timidity. It carried the vast, serene ocean that only those who have weathered life's fiercest storms could possess. America's Spotlight had decided to hold a special gala night, celebrating ageless talents, and Clara had been chosen to open the evening. Before her, over 1,500 people sat in utter silence, waiting. Clara lifted her voice into the stillness, singing a new ballad, a song she had written herself for this night. It told the journey of a forgotten heart, a wounded heart, but one that never truly stopped dreaming. Each word, each note, painted the story of her life. The lonely nights steeped in fear, the burst of courage beneath the blinding lights, the resurrection of hope. As she sang the final notes, once again, the entire theater rose to its feet. Applause, whistles, cheers. The sound swelled like a giant wave rolling through the hall. But this time, Clara didn't break down in tears. She stood firm, calm, receiving their love as something she had always known was hers, as if she had always believed that true light never dies. It only waits for the right soul, at the right moment, to blaze forth more brilliantly than any spotlight ever could. The MC stepped onto the stage, his voice thick with emotion as he took the microphone. Clara Weston, you haven't just inspired us with your music. You've reminded us about life itself, about perseverance, and the true value of the human spirit. Clara bowed deeply, but in her heart, her gratitude wasn't only for the audience tonight. It was for the young girl she had once been, the girl who had once cried silently after a cruel judgment. It was for the endless, lonely nights when she had nearly lost her faith. It was for Eleanor, for Madeline, for everyone who had seen something in her far beyond age or appearance. And most of all, it was gratitude for herself, for not giving up, for daring to step into the light, even with a trembling heart and a past that clung to her. That night, back at the hotel, Clara stood long before the mirror. She gently removed her pearl earrings, laid the pearl gown carefully on a chair, and her eyes still sparkling. She smiled and whispered to her reflection, "Better late than never, right?" Then she turned, stepping out onto the balcony, bathed in silver moonlight, overlooking the peaceful, golden-lit streets of Charleston. Clara lifted her face to the sky, closed her eyes, and let the night wind carry her soft laughter far into the distance, to the places where dreams once seemed dead, to the hearts still weary with fear, as a gentle reminder that sometimes the dreams are buried the longest. They're the ones that burn the brightest when they finally come alive. There are dreams that do not die when we give up. They simply fall asleep, quietly waiting for the day we find the courage to ignite them once more. Clara Weston's story is not merely the journey of a woman daring to step into the light at the age of 68. It is a powerful declaration that no one has the right to define your worth except yourself. In a world that moves too fast, too obsessed with surface standards, Clara reminds us that true beauty does not lie in age, nor in perfection, but in the strength of a heart that has known pain, has been broken, yet still chooses to sing, still chooses to live fully. The greatest lesson here is this: no matter how old you are, no matter how many times you have failed, if even the smallest ember of hope still burns within you, you still have the power to light up the entire sky. Do not let one harsh judgment, one failure, or one scar from your past lock the door to your dreams forever. Because sometimes all it takes is daring to take one more step, and life will open paths you never even dreamed of. The message I want to leave you with is this: light does not belong to youth alone. Light belongs to those who dare to believe, who dare to keep walking, who dare to hold on to hope even when everything seems lost. And sometimes, the ones the world has forgotten are exactly the ones who make the world bow its head in awe. My personal belief after hearing this story is simple. The greatest strength within us is not early success, but the ability to rise after every fall, the perseverance to keep going, and the unwavering faith in our own worth. Each of us carries a forgotten dream somewhere within our soul. And perhaps the most beautiful gift we can give ourselves is to never stop believing that we are worthy of setting it ablaze once more. If this story touched your heart, if you too believe that dreams never expire, please give this video a like, share your feelings in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Toch Story, so you won't miss the next stories that will continue to ignite faith, hope, and love within each of us.